we've been talking about, socialism, and Donald Trump is getting pilloried in the press for calling Mamdani a communist. And I find this ritual here that we're going, through is just, you say the word socialist, and 25 years ago when I said that these people were socialist, everybody said, oh my gosh, you can't call them socialist, that's an outrage. I said the mask is going to come off, they can't wait to tell you that they're socialist. Now Donald Trump said, Mamdani is a communist, and everybody is like, oh my gosh, look at this hysteric from the Cold War, he's out of a Cold War radio drama. So let me just clear this here, because the difference between the two terms is really not some great firewall of virtue here. As if one leads to like Scandinavian candles and the other one leads to gulags. That's not what's happening. What we've forgotten here is what always is forgotten, and that is how Karl Marx actually talked and saw the two. He didn't draw, polite little distinctions. He described socialism as the transition, the necessary scaffolding that leads to communism. That's Karl Marx. So socialism for Karl Marx was the road, not the destination. Communism is the end of that road. He wrote an essay, The Critique of Gotha program. And Marx said, under socialism, from each according to his ability to each according to his contribution. Under communism, to each according to his needs. The only difference here is timing. It's not philosophy. It's not goals. It's just how far along the revolution you are. Okay. Socialism is the bridge to communism. According to Karl Marx, don't take it from me. Communism is the completion of socialism. It's the antithesis of a free market system. Even Lenin called socialism the first and necessary phase of communism. So it's not partisan rhetoric, okay? This is the literal architecture of Marxist thought. But can we get out of the theories of all of this? History gives us warning, much more vivid than any theory. We like to imagine that the worst horrors of the 20th century came from one beast alone, and we think that's Hitler, but actually a bigger beast was Stalin. But if you want to look at Germany from 1930 to 1945, you see something really uncomfortable. A socialist movement that curdled into something monstrous while it never called itself communist. In fact, the Nazi government, the National Socialists, the Nazis, were not communists. They were against the communists. They killed communists. But they shared the same foundational belief that the individual is disposable and that the state defines the truth. They both believe that rights are not given by God, but administered by political power, and that dissent on any of this has to be crushed for the good of the collective. That's the definition we should care about. Socialism doesn't have to go full Marx communism to become catastrophic. It just has to replace the individual conscience with the will of the state. And don't you see that's what's happening here? They'll crush you. They'll destroy you. You disagree with them, they'll destroy you, even if you've been on their side. I'm going to share a story with you of something from 1979 that happened that I don't think most people understand. And in New York, you better understand this. When a society accepts the premise, that premise, history shows the slide can accelerate from a utopian promise to industrialized cruelty, horror show. Like that. Germany saw it, Russia saw it, China saw it, Cambodia saw it, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba. I mean, it's all right there, just different flags, different slogans, but it's the same structural error. So can we stop with this mocking of the language? People laughing. Oh, he said Mamdani is a communist when he's just merely a socialist. You're missing the point entirely. The issue is not whether the label is technically perfect. The issue is the philosophical DNA is exactly the same. collectivism over the individual, state control over personal agency, central planning over free will, and that the belief that human nature can be engineered by political force. That's where it always goes wrong. It doesn't understand human nature. So you can argue all you want about where socialism ends and where communism begins, but honestly, that's like, hey, kids, memorize the date of this war. Why? Why? I'm never going to use that fact again. What difference does it make? The thing we should care about is, why was that war fought? What happened at the end of that war? When communism and socialism, we should be saying, where does that road lead? I can tell you that the road always begins with the state controlling your choices, okay? It'll control your choice of energy, money, your children's education, your speech, your job, what you drive, and it always ends with never greater liberty. It always ends the same place, in a society that has forgotten that freedom is fragile, that power concentrates, that people are the same over and over and over again. Human beings, they go bad, especially when you give them power. When they're told they're part of a grand collective, humans are willing to commit horrors they would never do as an individual. That's the biggest thing. You get these horror shows of 100 million dead because it's a collective. We're all doing it. I'm not doing it. Everybody's doing it. That's the warning. That's historical. And we ignore it at our own peril. Now, the problem here is that socialism is on the rise and communism will be next. Remember, when I first started talking about Obama, I was raked across the coals every day for even suggesting he might kind of like socialism. Now, socialism is fine. So that road is still we're going to continue rolling down that road. And any country that goes into socialism, we're not talking about a capitalist, we're not talking about Sweden anymore. In fact, we are actually talking about Sweden. Look at the road they're going down now. I mean, they're going into their own kind of authoritarian rule with Sharia law. That is coming to Sweden. We're not talking about this friendly socialism. We're talking about the complete abandonment of the free market entirely. We've been this stupid little hybrid that doesn't work. It only causes misery. We've been this hybrid, and it doesn't work in a country this large and a country this diverse. But look, if you grew up after 9/11, where have you seen capitalism work for you? Okay. You've seen, I know I've seen it. I've seen the rich get richer. And I don't mean the rich. I mean the really, 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 really rich. The ones that the Democrats never actually talk about. They say they hate the rich. The rich have to pay their fair share. But they're hanging out with George Soros. They're hanging out with the Ford Foundation. They're hanging out with Bezos and all of these other people. Because that is real control. Okay? They don't hate those guys. They never do anything to affect their taxes. They don't pay taxes because they have the money to put it into trusts and everything else. You don't have that. So when I say I've seen it happen, I've seen the rich get richer. You know who the rich are? Citibank. These banks that have been taking our money through bailouts, when do we get that money back? When do you get that money back? You don't. You don't. That's why this is working. That's why you can say socialism is neat. Because nobody knows the killing machine that socialism actually is. Nobody has any idea. Look at the killing machine. Look at the killing machine that's being built in socialist Canada right now. What is it? MAID is the third or fourth biggest killer. It kills 1 in every 20 Canadians. Why is that happening? That's not out of compassion. That's because they're running out of money for health care. That's what that's about. Get them off the dole. Stop it. Now, if they're earning a lot of money, get them in, because we can still get their money. But let's make sure they're making money. If they're getting old, if they are crippled, if they've fought in a war and just can't handle it themselves, if they're super, super young, if they've got an expensive cancer, let them die. Help them die. That's because they're looking at the collective, not the individual. And that's the beginning of the dark killing machine in a socialist country. And Canada is, it has socialized medicine. The problem is it's all failing. Socialism always fails. Capitalism has taken people out of poverty, solved problems, healed people, given people heat and houses and cars and airplanes. All of that is because of the free market. All of that is the free market. You get rid of the free market, you put it in the hands of governments, and you have monsters. And we know it because we've seen it over and over and over again. But if you don't remember or barely remember 9/11, you've never been taught any of this. You've never been taught what it actually means. So you're seeing this play out over and over again. Look at that guy. I mean, he's not going to have to pay a price. He's just going to get away with it. And he's taking our tax dollars. Okay? I hate all of that. This capitalist system, it's corrupt. You're seeing that play out in real time. You're not seeing anybody actually go to jail for these things. Of course you think that it does. I don't think it works the way it is right now. But then you're given this false utopian promise without any information. Read the warning label on socialism. Where has it ever worked? Show me where it has worked. And don't say Sweden. Sweden is falling apart right now. You know why? Because Sweden, everybody was blonde hair, blue eyed. They were all related to each other. It was a small little country. You can do it when everybody is the same and it's small. It'll work to some degree. But the minute you start going diverse, the whole thing falls apart. So you want to be Sweden? Go ahead. Look at Sweden today. I don't want to be Sweden. Read the warning label. That's our job, to show that warning label. It's our job to teach what's not being taught. This is a death cult. Stay away from it. Warning. Warning.